Hi, I'm Kathleen Jasper, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the School Leadership Licensure exam, the SLLA. And today I was writing my book for this particular exam. I'm writing a test prep book, and I noticed some very definitive patterns that I thought would help you when you are looking for correct answer choices on the exam. Typically, this exam is full of scenario-based questions, so a big long narrative at the front, and then a bunch of answer choices with all these different, scenarios and narratives in those, and it can be very overwhelming. But I can show you how to identify good words and phrases from the test specifications and the blueprint to help you identify the correct answer choices on the test without getting bogged down by all those scenarios and crazy, answer choices and things like that. So let's take a look at the test specifications and the blueprint, and I'm going to walk you through some practice questions from ETS and also from our new publication for the SLLA. I recommend looking over the blueprint. The blueprint is in the study companion on the ETS website. And if you'd like to know more about where to get that, it looks like this here. But if you're on the ETS School Leadership Series, you can see here the School Leadership Licensure Assessment, and the study companion is here. Just click that, scroll down, and you'll be able to see the blueprint there. Now, I've put it into my presentation so that we can talk about it, but it is exactly the same as what is online and on the ETS website. Today, we're going to be talking about this particular piece of the exam. Now, when you take a look at the blueprint, you can see that it has outlined basically how many questions on the exam you're going to see for each particular thing. And then this section 2 here is your written response. We're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about section 1A. But we will have more videos on section 2 and the writing. So don't worry about that. But today we're going to focus on this. And notice that for section 1A, we have 18 questions. Right? 18 questions that have to do with vision and goals. And that's roughly 12% of the exam. Now, I have noticed while going through the test specifications and other practice questions that this 1A, vision and goals, is actually pervasive throughout the entire test. So some of the themes that you will notice for vision and goals, you will see in teaching and learning, you'll see in organizational systems, you'll see under key stakeholders, and so on and so forth. So I thought I would start here today, not only because it's the first piece of the exam, but also because the concepts and the skills associated with vision and goals will be seen throughout the entire exam, okay? So let's take a look at the test specifications for this specific piece, vision and goals. Now, the words in these test specifications, you can see here, that's what they're called. I believe this is on page 6. Yeah, see here, page 6. All right, vision and goals is underneath section 1, and then you have all this information here and here. Okay, the words in this test specification and in this part of the study companion, they are in the correct answer choices on the exam. And this will become more clear to you as we move through this particular video, but pay close attention to what is being said in the test specifications. This is what drives question generation on the exam. And you're going to see this in real time, so don't worry. So let's take a look at 1A, and specifically, we are going to take a look at this subskill number 1. Analyzes multiple sources of information and data. Data is a good word. If you see it in an answer choice, it's probably a correct answer. About current practice prior to developing and revising school visions and goals. Now, this particular piece is outlining data-driven decisions. What they're saying here is, before you make a decision, before you're looking at the data, sometimes on the exam, you will see questions like this big whole scenario, and then it'll say, what should the leader do first? And then A, B, C, and D are all pretty good questions, or pretty good answer choices. You would probably do any of the 4. However, the key word in the question is, what should the leader do first? And what do you do first as a leader? You analyze the data prior to making decisions. Now, do we make decisions on the fly as assistant principals and principals? Yes, I was an assistant principal and I put out fires all day long, and I didn't always have the data in front of me to make those decisions. But when we're talking about visions and goals and big things like that, a needs assessment, an evaluation of the data, and committees probably coming together to analyze that data together is number one. That's what you do first, okay? And then these small sub skills underneath that are selects appropriate school goal based on the data. So once you see that data, then you can better, prescribe the goal or whatever you're going to do. And then analyzes data to write a school goal or determines if visions and goals are appropriate, or if the vision and goals are appropriate. So that word appropriate is very important. You can't determine what's appropriate until you take a look at what's in the data. All right. Now let's take a look at number 2 here. Implements a vision and goals with high measurable expectations. Key words there. Pay close attention to those words. If you see them in an answer choice, it's probably the correct answer. And then it says for all students. Okay. So we're going to break these words down even more, but all students means all students, meaning your low guys, your middle guys, and your high guys. So you are having high expectations for them all. So even if a student is in the bottom quartile, that student is still able to make learning gains, achieve, and do awesome things. So you should be pushing that student, having high expectations for that student, just like you have high expectations for your AP, honors, advanced placement students, things like that. Now, if we look at A and B, and we also have a C here, develops a plan for implementing. So now we're beyond looking at the data. Now we're implementing the plan. So we're developing a plan for implementation. Plan is very important. Determines if expectations are, this is important, measurable, rigorous, and connected or aligned, okay? So it's great to have expectations, but if you can't measure them, you don't know if the expectation has been met. So it's kind of a moot point. So what you want to do is pay attention to whether or not they're measurable. Are they measurable by, assessment data, maybe state standardized assessment data? Are they measurable by observation data, maybe classroom walkthroughs or something like that? Maybe it's a parent survey or a student survey. Whatever it is, you have to be able to measure it. And then, of course, it needs to be rigorous. Rigorous is a buzzword in education, of course. And then when we say connected to vision and goals, that means you've looked at the data, you've determined what the vision and goal is going to be. Now you need to see if your expectations are aligned to that goal or vision. Okay, so alignment is key here. And then C, discriminates between vision and goals that are measurable and not measurable. So you're going to have to look at a set of maybe things that your staff wants to do, or a set of things that you want to do, some expectations. And you have to determine, can I measure this? Is it appropriate? And make those decisions as you move through the school, right? And the last piece that I want to go over today under vision and goals is this number 3. Assures alignment of the vision and goals. So whatever you choose based on the data, now the thing that you choose must be aligned to school, local, state, and federal policies. This is code for alignment to state standards. The state standards should be driving these instructions, these decisions as well. The state standards should be driving your teacher's instructions. State standards should be driving, what kind of goals you're going to implement, because they need to be aligned. Everything should be aligned to the state standards. And of course, the state standards are aligned to the federal policies, like outlined in No Child Left Behind and Race to the Top. Typically, everything education is deferred to the state. States are in charge of education. However, there are some federal policies like No Child Left Behind, Race to the Top, certain aspects of Common Core that states have to abide by. But if you see the term state standards in an answer choice, it is your correct answer. All right, so now what I like to do is, based on what we saw in the test specifications here, all these words that we outlined and talked about, I want to make little notes about what I think the good words are. Now, you will notice in a lot of my videos online, I typically talk about these good words you're going to want to look at. on test day in the answer choices. These good words will be in the correct answer choices on the exam. Now, if we go back to the test specifications, you can see that the first kind of set of good words that I talked about was this data-driven decision-making or data-driven decisions. So let's make that on our list, data-driven decisions. And remember, this is going to be done first. So you're going to look at the data first, okay? Always looking at the data first, all right? Then another piece, let's go back and take a look here. We have, I like this part, multiple sources of information and data. That's going to be a variety of data. So that's going to be both qualitative and quantitative. You're not just looking at test scores. You're not just looking at one measure. You're looking at all of it and putting it together. You know, one piece of data will tell you a piece of the story. All the data will tell you the entire story. So make sure you pay attention to that. Now let's get into number 2's good words, okay? We have high expectations and they have to be measurable. So let's break this down. High expectations. The term high expectations is on so many leadership exams. So make sure you pay attention to that. And that's for all students, not just your AP honors high-level kids. All students can meet high-level expectations, okay? Now let's continue our good words list because we're not quite done yet. Good words. I'll do my little sunburst there. All right. So we've already talked about high expectations for all students, but we said that they have to be measurable, right? Measurable. How am I going to know if you met the expectation? So I also like the term measurable objectives because measurable objectives are like measurable goals. So that's really, really important there. You can see rigorous and connected. We mentioned connected is also alignment. So, what did we say here? Rigorous. Rigorous. That's a buzzword in education for sure. And then alignment. Very, very important. Alignment. And now, just as important as data-driven decisions, I think like this is probably number 1. And state standards is probably number 2, depending on what section of the test you're taking. But both of them are super, super important. Some would argue state standards is the number 1 important thing because without the standards, you can't do anything, right? But both of them are very, very important. So I'm going to make sure that on my good words list, I have state standards. All right, state standards are very, very, very important. If you see the term state standards or alignment to state standards in an answer choice, it's probably the correct answer. So now that we know this, now that we have all of this mapped out and we have our good words here and our good words here, I want to take you to the actual test questions in the study companion. Now, these are questions you might see on the exam. You'll definitely see questions like these, okay? So ETS writes this exam. So the questions in the ETS study companion are going to look a lot like the questions on the exam. Now, they don't have a whole lot, but you can kind of get an idea of what they are going to be asking you on the exam. Now, let me show you where the good words situation is really going to help you on this exam. Take a look at this particular thing here. It says questions 1 through 3 are based on the following scenario. And then they give you this big scenario here. And then numbers 1, 2, and 3 are based on that. So most people, they start right up here. A principal has been appointed, and they start reading all of this here. Okay. Now, that's not the way you do things on an exam. That is absolutely not the way you do things. You don't even have to really read this particular situation here. I want you to go straight to the answer choices and identify your good words, the things that we talked about when we looked at the test specifications. Now, let's take a look. If we take a look at number 1, let's just focus on that one. Do not start here. Don't start at each teacher. Let's go to the answer choices first and decide which ones I can eliminate, and then go back and check in this area up here if it works. So I like to eliminate bad choices and showcase good answer choices here just to get me started. So let's take a look at A. Conducting an analytical review of all papers to assign scores. Well, I like the word analytical because we want to be analyzing the data. And the papers, this must be student work. Remember, I haven't read the question yet, and that's okay. This must be student work or some sort of thing like that. And so that is data. But look at this at the end, to assign scores. Typically, and I know scores are very important, they are very important, but on leadership exams, scores are not as important as other things. Ranking is not as important as other things. So I'm going to temporarily cross off A because it says assign scores. Let me look at B. Reviewing all papers to identify common areas of weakness. Now, reviewing all papers, remember we said the papers could possibly be the data. So I'm reviewing all papers to identify common areas of weakness, analyzing data to determine the needs. Where is the weakness? I'll keep B. C, targeting students in need of remediation based on the samples provided. Well, I really like the word targeting. That's a good word when it comes to leadership. Remediation is also a good word when it comes to leadership because you're helping students with what they need. So I'm going to keep C. Let's go with D. Identifying benchmark quality samples to use as exemplars for next year's instruction. Next year's instruction. That seems a little far ahead. I have a feeling this question is about this year's instruction. Typically, we're not thinking about that unless it's brought up in the scenario. I'm going to just cross off D and focus my attention on answers B and C. Now, you may then start up here, right? A principle. No, let's go to the question stem first, okay? Each teacher brings copies of student writing samples. All right, so there's our data to share with the group, thinking they're PLCs or whatever. Which of the following actions should the teachers take first? First. What did we say happens first? We said that we look at multiple sources of information and data first, right? So which one of these answer choices helps us with that? Reviewing all papers to identify common areas of weakness. That's data evaluation. Then we have this targeting students. Targeting students is doing the thing. You are actually already made a decision here. So really the correct answer is B, because you have to evaluate the data first before you can prescribe any kind of intervention or remediation or targeting. So this is where things get tricky, all right? So I'm going to eliminate C, and B is going to be my answer. Now, I would, because I'm taking a test, I'm going to go back up in here and just check, okay? A principal has been appointed to an elementary school in which the scores on the 4th grade state language arts test have been decreasing each year. The weakest area is writing, all right? So that makes sense that we're looking at student writing here. With a goal of improving student writing instruction, okay, here's the goal, and that's the whole piece of vision and goals, the ones that we were talking about earlier. The principal and the 4th grade teachers, so together collaboratively, decide to set time aside to examine, to look at the data. So what should the teachers do first? Well, the teachers should review all the papers and then identify the need, the weakness. Then, so this would be number 1, this would be number 2, okay? All right, let's go to number 2. Again, you're not gonna start here. No, I'm gonna go here. Let's take a look and see if we can identify any good words or phrases. Align, ooh, I like align, their lesson objectives with their teaching strategies and materials. right, it's got alignment of lesson objectives to teaching strategies and materials. Okay, it's pretty good. I'll keep it. B, match their lesson plans with the lessons actually taught. Okay, this is a common bad word situation. When you see things like things actually taught or things that students actually need, they are trying to trip you up on the difference between state standards and what you think students need to know to be successful. Remember, the state and the standards are the boss, not what is actually taught or what you think the students actually need to learn. And actually is kind of a ridiculous word. I wouldn't use it academically. However, I use it all the time in my speech. But this is a bad kind of mixture of words. I'm going to cross it off, okay? C, include teaching strategies that meet the needs of diverse learners. Okay, I like that. Teaching strategies and to meet the needs of diverse learners. That's actually, those are good words there. Okay, so I'm going to keep C. And let's look at D. Match their lesson objectives with the 4th grade language arts standards. Standards trumps every single other question or every single other answer choice on here. It supersedes all other things. So this is going to be my number 1 moving forward. Now let's take a look at the question. Always check to make sure. Over the course of several weeks, the principal observes each of the 4th grade teachers. In light of the concern about improving student scores on language arts assessments, the principal's primary concern should be, well, what are the language arts assessments modeled after? The state standards. Now, all of these answer choices seem reasonable if you are a teacher and you're planning, or if you're leading teachers and you're looking at what teachers are doing. All of these answer choices are reasonable, but there is one. What should be the principal's primary concern? There it is again. Here you have the word first, okay? You want to pay attention to these particular words. What should be the primary concern? The primary concern should be the standards, because if the instruction is not aligned to the standards, then the students are not prepared for the state standardized assessment in language arts, okay? And again, I didn't even have to go back and read that. I could have gone on and gotten that correct. I do recommend, though, you just check, because that's really important too, okay? And let's take a look at, oops, sorry about that, number 3. It is, there we go. Oh, I'll just pull it down. All right, before we take a look at all of this here, we want to look at this here, okay? Right here. Let me just take that was a little bit messy. All right, here we go. A, the school's vision statement and student demographic information. All right, I'm not sure if I need to eliminate that or not. The language arts block schedule for the 4th grade classrooms and the reading levels of 4th grade student. Okay, language arts block schedule. Not sure what the schedule is going to show me. The language arts standards for 4th grade students and disaggregated standardized test data. Okay, lots of good information going on there. Right now, that's my winner. D, the educational background and years of experience of the 4th grade teachers. All right, I kind of see where they're going here. They're looking to see which information is probably most valuable. Let's go up to the question stem. Which of the following 2 pieces of information would be most relevant for the principal? And again, we have this piece here. Sorry, it won't stay down. Most relevant to determine strategies for improving 4th grade students' achievement in language arts. Most relevant. What would be the most relevant? Well, the standards and the disaggregated, good word, disaggregated data from standardized tests. Disaggregated means it's not just the whole thing like, oh, we have, 55% are level 3 readers, right? No, it's, okay, what percentage of those readers are ESE? What percentage are ELL? What are their scores in main idea, vocabulary, digging down into the data to get that meta analysis. We call getting meta with the data. And that's what's going to help you there. So again, didn't have to read the question. Didn't have to read this big old scenario here. Didn't have to get bogged down with all this information. So I'm telling you guys, this will help you on exam day. Now, today I was writing my own questions for my own book, And I wanted to go over a couple of those with you here. So this is an example question for subskill 1A, selects the appropriate school goal based on the data. All right, now let's practice what we preach, right? Let's go straight into the answer choices here and see if we can eliminate anything. Assessment data and 9th grade language arts standards. That's probably going to be the answer, but let's keep going. Portfolio assessments and parent feedback, still not as good as assessment data and language arts standards. Student surveys and work samples, attendance records and discipline referrals. Well, it all depends on what we're looking for here. So right now, A is my answer, but let's go back into the question. An assistant principal is leading a team of 9th grade English language arts teachers in increasing reading achievement on the state test. Well, what is attached to the state test? The 9th grade language arts standards. I don't even have to read any further, but which of the following would be the most useful? There's that language again. Most useful when trying to develop goals and instructional approaches. Well, all of this is useful, but we want most useful. And the most useful thing you could have here is the assessment data and the language arts standards, all right? And finally, one more question from my book, the NavEd SLLA book. This one is having to do with 2B under the vision and goals piece. Determines if expectations are, here we go, measurable, rigorous, connected to the vision and goals. We said that those are all good words, all right? And remember, high expectations for all students is also connected to this. So let's go with the answer choices first. We will increase 5th grade reading gains by 15% on the state reading assessment. We will increase student reading achievement throughout the school by 33%. We will continue with our current reading program and evaluate gains accordingly. We will increase 5th grade reading scores on the state reading assessment. All right, I have no idea what's going on here. Let's read the question, and sometimes that will happen. A new principal is analyzing current reading assessment data for 5th grade students. The principal wants to communicate expectations to teachers and students based on what the data shows. Which of the following set of expectations are most appropriate for this purpose? All right, so we are trying to communicate expectations. When we communicate expectations, we want to be very specific and look it up here in determining if the expectations are measurable, rigorous, and connected to the vision and goals. Now, this measurable piece is important. Can I measure D or C? We will continue with our current reading program and evaluate accordingly. That's not specific enough to be measurable. D, we will increase 5th grade reading scores on the state reading assessment. By how much? How long are you going to do this? There's no measurability there. Take that out. So A, we will increase, here we go, specific 5th grade reading gains by 15%. And here we have the specific test that can be measured, state reading assessment. All right. We will increase student reading achievement throughout the school by 33%. Now, here's the difference between A and B. A is much more specific. Specificity is very, very important when you're making goals. And I outlined this in our new guide. You got to make sure they're SMART goals. They're specific and measurable. That's the first part of the SMART goals. And A is the most specific and the most measurable, and it is connected to the overall vision and goal of the school. So A is going to be the best answer choice there. That one's a little bit harder. All right, so that takes you through kind of the way you can approach this particular exam. Make sure you're reading those test specifications and understanding that language in the exam.